I used to think sisters were supposed to be your built-in best friends, the people who'd braid your hair at sleepovers, lend you sweaters without you begging, and whisper secrets under the covers. For a long time, I tried to make my older sister, Marissa, be that person for me. I copied her hobbies, dressed like her, even admired the way she tied her shoes. And for a while, I thought that meant we were close, that maybe she saw me the same way I saw her, as someone worth loving. But Marissa never saw me as a sister. She saw me as a threat. It started small. If she won a medal in track, I'd congratulate her, and she'd roll her eyes like my happiness annoyed her. If Mom complimented my school project, Marissa would suddenly have a dramatic headache that needed attention. I'd wrap my arms around her after she came home from a dance recital or a choir performance, telling her how proud I was, and she'd shove me hard enough that I'd stumble. But I still kept trying because I didn't want to believe she hated me. The day everything shifted, the day I realized Marissa wasn't just cold or moody, but capable of cruelty, was my 12th birthday. My parents surprised me with a bright pink bike, the exact kind Marissa had begged for the year before. She hadn't gotten it, and I knew she still secretly wanted one, so the moment I unboxed it, I sprinted upstairs to her room. I was so excited that I didn't even knock decorously. I pounded on the door like a lunatic until she opened it. "Come see, I want you to write it first," I said, practically vibrating. For a second, she smiled. Not a sweet smile, something sharper, but I didn't notice back then. I just thought she was happy. She followed me outside, and when she saw the bike glinting in the sun, her eyes narrowed, just briefly enough that a kid wouldn't catch it. "You sure you want me to write it first?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "You always learn faster than me." She walked it toward the street like she was going to mount it. Instead, right as a truck roared past, she locked eyes with me, lifted the bike by the handlebars, and hurled it into the road. The truck crushed it like tinfoil. I stood there frozen, heart collapsing. Marissa didn't flinch. She just watched the wreckage, then shrugged. "Guess you should have held on tighter," she said. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked back inside and sat on my bed in silence. That was the moment right there when something inside me finally shut down. I stopped telling her about my life. I stopped hoping she'd like me. I stopped thinking sisters were meant to love you automatically. But even then, I never imagined what she'd do later. I never imagined how far jealousy could push her. A couple years passed like that, me keeping my world small and private, Marissa treating me like a shadow she wanted to stamp out. But when I was 14, something happened I wasn't prepared for. I won first place at the regional cross-country championships. Marissa hadn't moved out for college yet, so she overheard our parents talking about it. I expected the usual eye-rolling or snarky remark, but instead she asked if she could come to my award ceremony. My guard melted a little. I actually believed she wanted to try again. I said yes without hesitation. The ceremony was packed, the gym echoing with chatter and applause. The coach read names from lowest to highest. I could feel my stomach fluttering as he got closer to first place. Then, just before he said my name, Marissa made a noise, something between a gasp and a sob, and collapsed onto the floor. People screamed. Someone yelled for water. Several adults surrounded her. Our coach stopped mid-sentence. Paramedics were called. My award was forgotten, swallowed by the chaos. And Marissa? She opened her eyes just as the sirens blared outside and said, "Oops, I didn't eat enough today. Sorry, everyone." People clapped in relief. My accomplishment disappeared. And once again, she stole the spotlight. After that, I became a vault. I didn't share anything about my life, good, bad, or in between. I didn't tell my parents when I placed in races or aced exams. I didn't tell Marissa anything at all. I thought that would get me safe. I didn't realize that hiding my accomplishments would only make Marissa dig for them harder. By the time I was 17, life had gotten quieter. I focused on school, on running, on getting into the colleges I had dreamed about. When the acceptance letter from Eastwood University, an Ivy League school, arrived, I wasn't even the one who found it. My parents did. I came home to Mom shrieking with joy, Dad taking pictures like he was paparazzi, both of them hugging me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. For the first time in years, I let myself celebrate with them. because I thought foolishly that Marissa couldn't ruin this. She had moved out, she barely visited, she didn't know what I'd been doing with my life, but I underestimated her talent for destruction. The next morning, my parents barged into my room, shoving my clothes into garbage bags. "What are you doing?" I choked out. Mom's face was blotchy, panic-stricken. Dad's hands shook. "Your sister, Marissa," Mom whispered. "She's been diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer." My stomach dropped, not from fear, from disbelief. "She needs space," Dad added. "2 rooms, one for her belongings, one to rest in. We'll set up the couch for you." I stared at them, numb. I had seen photos on Marissa's social media just a month earlier. Long hair, glowing skin, smiling selfies. None of it added up. I knew, instantly, deeply, she was lying. And not just lying, weaponizing cancer to steal the best moment of my life. I needed proof, evidence, something concrete. Because Marissa wasn't just jealous anymore. She was dangerous. And I had no idea how far she was willing to go.
Marissa came home later that same day, walking through the front door like a celebrity arriving at a press conference. She wore a beanie pulled low, oversized sweatshirt, dramatic, slow steps, as if gravity treated her differently now that she was sick. But when she pulled the beanie off, I nearly laughed out loud. Her hair, supposedly lost to chemo, was buzzed unevenly but not naturally. I knew what real hair loss looked like. This was more like she'd grabbed kitchen scissors in a frenzy and hacked away, trying to imitate a look she'd seen online. Her smile was triumphant. She'd beaten me again without even competing. She laid down dramatically on the couch, moaning that she was tired from the treatments. My parents hovered around her, fluffing pillows, stroking her back, offering her juice, tissues, blankets. She soaked it all in like a cat sunning herself. I made her favorite dinner that night. I needed her comfortable. I needed her unsuspecting. If she felt safe, she'd get sloppy. For the next 2 weeks, I slept on the couch with my clothes and plastic bags while she took over 2 bedrooms. She insisted she needed that extra space so she could focus on healing. My parents nodded solemnly like this was a spiritual retreat rather than blatant exploitation. Then Marissa decided to throw a party. A cancer bravery party. She invited everyone, our extended family, neighbors, people from my school. She wanted an audience. She wanted sympathy. And she wanted me humiliated in the background. Perfect! I wore something plain and forgettable. I stayed quiet. I smiled politely when people told Marissa how inspiring she was. I watched as she recited her rehearsed speech, complete with shaky breaths and manufactured tears. I'd heard her practice the performance through the bathroom door, never guessing I'd one day play the final act. When she got halfway through her monologue, I clinked my fork against a glass. "Marissa, you're such a hero. Come here." She blinked, caught off guard by my sudden affection. I stepped forward and hugged her tightly, like a supportive little sister should. And then quietly, so no one else heard, "You should have been more careful." Before she could react, I reached behind her head and peeled off the bald cap. Her real hair, thick blonde waves she'd curled that morning, spilled down to her waist like a spotlight shining on her deceit. Gasps filled the room. A few people dropped their drinks. My mother's inhale was so sharp, I thought she might collapse. Marissa screamed, a high-pitched animal sound, grabbing at her hair like she could shove it back under the fake scalp. But I wasn't done. I stepped aside and turned on the TV with the remote already in my hand. The screen lit up with a video I'd recorded secretly. Marissa in the bathroom mirror, rehearsing her speech, adjusting the bald cap, wiping fake tears, and smiling at her reflection like a satisfied villain. Silence swallowed the living room. Then people began to leave. Quickly, uncomfortably, whispering and avoiding our eyes. Marissa bolted, ran out the door, drove off like she was being chased by ghosts. I felt nothing. Just empty. Later, I went upstairs to the couch I now slept on. My parents didn't say a word to me. They just numbly cleaned the living room while I quietly folded myself into the blankets, waiting for whatever hell would come next. It came in the morning, when I woke to my mom slapping me across the face. It wasn't a little slap.
It stung so hard, my vision blurred. "How could you?" she screamed. "How could you tear off her hair extensions while she's battling cancer?" "Hair extensions?" "Mom," I said, voice hoarse. "She's faking." "She didn't want pity," Mom shouted. "She didn't want people to know she could afford expensive extensions. You humiliated her for no reason." I stared at her. I'd never seen her so convinced of something so clearly insane. But Marissa had woven her web so thoroughly that my mother couldn't see daylight through it. Over the next few days, things spiraled faster than I thought possible. Marissa returned home with a stack of medical documents. Appointment cards, typed diagnoses, lab forms, treatment schedules. They all looked real. Too real. I realized then she'd done research. She'd planned this. She wasn't improvising. She wanted to crush me, twist me into the villain, annihilate my future. And my parents bought every page. Worse, Marissa claimed I'd been emotionally abusing her, that I mocked her for having cancer, that I was jealous of her bravery and trying to steal attention. My parents sent me to therapy. Not for my mental health, but because they believed I had narcissistic personality disorder. Every session was torture. The therapist didn't believe me. Why would she? I had no evidence. I just looked like a resentful teenager attacking their saintly, terminally ill sister. Meanwhile, Marissa held gatherings of her own. People visited her almost daily, showering her with sympathy. She'd cry about her pain. She'd sigh about her struggles. She'd mention, subtly, how I wasn't supportive. Rumors exploded like wildfire. At school, people whispered about how I'd attach my sick sister at her courage celebration. My social circle shrank. Teachers eyed me differently. Even friendly classmates now kept their distance. Then came the day that broke me. I came home from school, exhausted, and found my laptop destroyed. The screen cracked like a spider web, the keyboard dented like someone stomped on it. Marissa sat at the kitchen counter stirring tea. "Technology is unpredictable. Hope you backed up your college applications." She smiled. Everything inside me shattered. I spent the next week rebuilding assignments from memory, begging for extensions, drowning in stress. My grades dropped. My teachers grew suspicious. Friends drifted. Then Eastwood University contacted me. Someone had anonymously reported that I had been abusing a terminally ill family member. They were reevaluating my acceptance. I knew who did it. Every sentence in the report was dripping with Marissa's dramatic writing style. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned. I bought tiny voice recorders and hid them throughout the house. Under furniture, behind photos, even at a fake plant on the bookshelf. And the recordings? The recordings were worse than I expected. Marissa bragging, laughing, mocking my parents, describing exactly how she'd ruined my laptop, gloating about sabotaging my college acceptance. But I still needed help. Someone who would believe me. So I called Aunt Rachel from a payphone because Marissa monitored my cell. She believed me instantly. She told me she'd been suspicious for months. She promised to visit that weekend to look at the evidence herself. She became the first adult to actually see me. And just when I thought things might finally turn around, I came home Friday to find every hidden recorder gone. Every device, every USB drive, every backup. Wiped away like none of it ever existed. But she didn't know about the cloud backups. She didn't know I outsmarted her this time. And Rachel arrived that day. And this time, we were ready. The war had officially begun.
Aunt Rachel showed up on Saturday morning holding a casserole dish and wearing the same steely expression she used whenever she caught someone lying at family gatherings. She hugged Marissa first, of course she did. She had to play along. Marissa melted in the ear like a damsel in distress, milking the sympathy like cream. "Oh, sweetheart," Rachel murmured, "you're so brave." I nearly gagged. But the moment we got upstairs, to my room, the one I'd been kicked out of, her face dropped the performance entirely. "Show me everything," she said. I handed her my phone, open to the folder of cloud backups. The moment she pressed play on their first recording, her jaw tightened. She lit stunned, eyes darkening, shoulders stiffening. She went through file after file, Marissa laughing about fooling my parents, mocking my acceptance, bragging about destroying my laptop, even mimicking Mom's voice in cruel caricature.
Then Rachel saw the screenshots of Marissa shopping at the mall during supposed chemo sessions, the timeline of inconsistencies, the comparison of forged document fonts, my notes highlighted like a crime investigation board. By the time she finished, she whispered, "Emily, this is worse than I thought." She said she'd talked to my parents, but she warned me, "We need to be strategic. If we push too hard, they'll shut down. They're emotionally invested in believing Marissa. We have to peel the truth slowly." It made sense, but waiting even a few hours felt impossible. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed a bucket of nails. We spent the afternoon acting normal, helping Mom cut vegetables, listening to Dad ramble about work, pretending the universe wasn't about to split at dinner. Dinner was awkward from the start. Mom kept fussing over Marissa's plate, cutting her chicken into tiny pieces like she was a toddler. Dad asked if she needed a softer chair. Marissa sighed dramatically, pushing fruit around like each bite with agony. Rachel waited for the perfect moment, calm, casual, calculated. "So, Marissa," she said lightly, "which hospital is managing your treatment?" Marissa stiffened. "It's private." "Oh, of course," Rachel replied smoothly. "I understand. I just thought I might know one of your doctors. An old friend of mine is an oncologist. Lovely woman. I can give her your name. She could help fast-track appointments if you're having trouble." Marissa's fork froze midair. She forced a smile. "That's sweet, but my team has everything handled." "Well, what's your oncologist's name? I'd love to send a thank you card." Silence. Then Marissa abruptly stood up. I need the bathroom," she muttered, chair scraping loudly. She walked off, hand on the wall, pretending weakness. Rachel raised an eyebrow at me like we both see that performance, right? The moment Marissa was out of earshot, Rachel pulled out her phone and set it on the table. "Karen, Michael, there are things you need to see." My parents exchanged confused glances. Rachel didn't wait. She opened the first recording. Marissa's voice filled the dining room, laughing, taunting, bragging. At first, my parents recoiled as if the phone were radioactive. Mom whispered, No, that's not. Dad shook his head that he could somehow shake away reality. But Rachel kept going, one recording after another, one screenshot after another, one lie after the next. Mom's face trained of color. Dad's jaw quivered. When Marissa came back, she froze instantly. Everyone staring at her. The silence was so heavy it felt like the air had weight. Dad stood slowly. "Marissa," he said, voice trembling but firm, "do you have cancer?" She blinked rapidly, then launched into hysterics. "You're ganging up on me," she cried. "Emily faked those recordings. She's trying to ruin me. She hates me. She's jealous." Rachel hit play on another recording, Marissa laughing about fooling them. "No, she edited that. She drugged me. She's the monster." She spun wild excuses like a cornered animal, but Dad repeated the question, louder this time. "Do you have cancer?" Her face twisted. Something snapped inside her. "No!" she screamed. "Are you happy? No, I don't have cancer, but none of you ever cared about me. Emily steals everything. Every time she succeeds, I disappear. You only love her." She was shaking with rage, spitting words like venom. "You all worship her. I had to do something to matter. She took everything from me, my life, my identity, my parents, everything." Then, before anyone could react, she lunged at me. I barely had time to flinch. Mom looped to block her, and Marissa's nails ripped down Mom's arm, drawing long, bleeding scratches. Mom screamed. Dad bolted up. Grabbing Marissa, he pulled her back as she thrashed and clawed like a feral creature. "I hate you!" she screamed at me, voice raw and animalistic. "You ruined everything, everything." Neighbors' dogs barked from the noise. Lights turned on across the street. Rachel grabbed her phone and dialed 911, voice steady as steel. She calmly explained the situation. My mother's shaking, clutching her bleeding arm. I stood frozen, every bone vibrating with adrenaline. Minutes later, paramedics arrived. They tended to Mom's arm, then turned to Marissa, who was now sobbing uncontrollably, alternating between hysterical apologies and vicious accusations. She was taken to the hospital for psychiatric evaluation. The paramedics handed her gently, as if she were fragile glass instead of the hurricane she had been moments earlier. As she was escorted out, she glared at me like she wanted to burn a hole through my soul. "This is your fault," she whispered hoarsely, and then she was gone. The house felt unnaturally quiet once the sirens faded. Uneasy. Hollow. When my parents finally spoke to me that night, it felt like the floor had dropped out from under them. They apologized, deeply, repeatedly, with tears and cracked voices. Mom held my face gently where she had slapped me days earlier, sobbing as she whispered how sorry she was. Dad looked old, tired, like he'd aged a decade in one evening. They asked how long Marissa had been hurting me. I told them everything.
About the bike, the award ceremony, the laptop, the rumors, the anonymous report. Every revelation struck them like a physical blow. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to reconcile the daughter they loved with the person who'd ruined their other child's life. But one thing was clear. Marissa needed help. Real help. Not the kind she faked, not the favoritism she weaponized. Professional, intensive, long-term help. And they needed to protect me. For the first time in years, I felt something that had vanished from my life. Hope. Fragile, trembling hope. But the story didn't end there. Not even close.
Marissa stayed in the hospital for 3 days, long enough for doctors to worry she might harm herself or someone else. When she came home, everything felt brittle, like the walls might crack under the weight of everything we've been ignoring for years. She was assigned a strict therapy schedule, twice a week at a specialized clinic. The preliminary diagnosis was unsettling: narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. The therapist told us to expect volatility, manipulation, regression, and maybe, eventually, improvement. But only if Marissa actually wanted help. At first, she didn't speak to me at all. She'd pass by in the hallway and look right through me as if I didn't exist. Honestly, that was the relief. Mom and Dad finally understood the magnitude of what I'd endured, but repairing the damage in my life wasn't as simple as them believing me now. Everything outside our house had already burnt. School was a nightmare. Rumors don't die just because the truth comes out. They cling to people's minds like stubborn stains. Everyone had already decided I was the girl who humiliated her dying sister. Even after my parents explained everything to the school administration, showing the recordings, the confession, everything, students whispered behind their lockers. Some thought I'd faked the confession. Others thought I was cruel. A few pitied me, but kept their distance, not wanting the drama. My once bustling lunch table dwindled until it was just me. Teachers were sympathetic, but cautious. Even my closest friends seemed unsure how to act around me. For weeks, school felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. But I kept going, because I had already survived worse. The college situation wasn't immediately resolved either. Eastwood University still had to conduct their investigation. I submitted the audio files, the therapist statement, a letter from Aunt Rachel, detailing the entire situation, and even the police report about the destroyed laptop. Weeks crawled by. I barely slept. I refreshed my email 100 times a day, terrified that I'd open my inbox one morning and see the word rescinded. When the call finally came, I was so nervous I almost didn't pick up. The admissions officer apologized for the ordeal. They said they understood the context now and that my acceptance was safe. They even offered resources for students dealing with family trauma. When I hung up, I sank onto the floor and cried harder than I had in years. Not from sadness, but from relief, from finally feeling like my future hadn't been destroyed. But just because my future was safe didn't mean Marissa was done with me. One afternoon, I walked into my room and caught her rifling through my desk drawers. She jolted like she'd been electrocuted, plastering on a fake, innocent smile. "I was just borrowing a pen," she said. But my acceptance letter was crumpled in her hand. She'd been squeezing it so hard the paper was puckered. The official seal was half ripped. My stomach twisted. She wasn't cured. She wasn't even close. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just walked out. That night, I installed a deadbolt on my bedroom door. My parents didn't question it. They helped me pick out a strong one. It clicked shut with a sound that felt like safety. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. But the real turning point, the moment I realized Marisha's behavior wasn't just destructive, but compulsive, came during prom season. I'd finally started feeling like a normal teenager again. My friend Logan asked me to go with him, just as friends, and I'd bought a beautiful blue dress with my saved babysitting money. It wasn't expensive, but it made me feel elegant, maybe even special. The night of prom, I was doing my makeup, humming lightly, feeling hopeful. Hope was still foreign to me, but I was trying. Then I heard a crash.
I rushed to my room and found my dress on the floor, soaked in bleach. Large, harsh splashes had eaten through the fabric. The blue was splotched with ugly white burns. The smell was chemical and unmistakable. Marissa's bathroom door clicked shut down the hall. She'd been waiting for this moment. She wanted me devastated. She wanted the night ruined. For a second, I felt myself sinking back into the helplessness, the fear, the exhaustion. But instead of breaking, I reached for my phone. "Aunt Rachel," I whispered, voice wavering. "I'll be there in 10, she said. Exactly 15 minutes later, she burst into my room holding a garment bag. Inside was her daughter's old prom dress, green satin, simple but beautiful. "Try it on," she said. It fit like it had been made for me. Rachel styled my hair, fastened borrowed jewelry around my neck, and hugged me. "You look stunning," she said. And for the first time since childhood, I believed her. Prom was magical. Logan and I danced until our feet ached. My classmates actually smiled at me again. For a few hours, I forgot I had a sister who wanted to watch me crumble. When I came home later that night, Marissa was waiting in the living room expecting me to be broken. But I walked in wearing that green dress, cheeks flush with happiness, shoes dangling from my fingers. I smiled at her. "It was an amazing night," I said softly. Her expression cracked. Fury, disappointment, confusion. And then she stormed off, slamming her door so hard the walls shuddered. For the first time ever, I'd won. Days later, Marissa's therapist called a family meeting. She sat us in a circle and explained that Marissa had admitted to the dress sabotage, along with a list of other incidents. She recommended we consider intensive residential treatment. Mom's face crumpled. Dad worked his temples like he was fighting a migraine. They argued that night, quietly at first, then louder, then heartbreakingly soft. But the therapist insisted. This isn't improving fast enough. She needs more support than outpatient therapy can provide. Marissa must have overheard. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen looking hollow. "I'll go," she said. "I'm tired of being like this." I didn't know if she meant it, but she sounded exhausted, drained, like someone finally admitting defeat. On Monday, we drove her 3 hours north to Silvercrest Recovery Center, a therapeutic facility nestled between mountains and pines. It looked peaceful, too peaceful for the damage Marissa had caused. The staff welcomed her gently, but firmly. She hugged my parents goodbye, but didn't even glance at me. And that was fine. I didn't need closure. I needed distance. As we drove away, I watched the building disappear behind the trees. And for the first time in years, my shoulders eased. The house felt different when we got home. Quieter, lighter, like a storm had finally moved off the coast. I unpacked my belongings back into my room. My parents and I ate dinner without tension. We talked, we laughed, we rebuilt something that had been cracking for years. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it finally felt possible.
Senior year began in a way I hadn't experienced before. Calm. Not perfect, not carefree, but peaceful enough that I no longer braced myself when I opened my bedroom door or checked my backpack to make sure nothing had been destroyed. With Marissa 3 hours away at Silvercrest Recovery Center, our home felt lighter, brighter even. Mom cooked more. Dad cracked jokes again. We played board games on weekends, trying to rediscover what being a family meant without fear hovering in every corner. But healing wasn't instant. I had spent years repressing my own needs, flinching at sudden noises, preparing for emotional fallout that might explode at any second. Even without Marissa there physically, her shadow lingered. Her voice still echoed in my mind sometimes, sharp like broken glass. That's why my parents insisted I continue therapy. This time, not because they believed I was narcissistic or cruel, but because I genuinely needed help untangling the years of trauma. And honestly, therapy was the first space where I felt like I could breathe. My therapist taught me what boundaries actually looked like. She helped me see how much of my identity had been shaped by someone else's rage. She taught me that protecting myself didn't make me selfish. It made me human. Meanwhile,
Marissa sent letters home from Silvercrest. At first, they were stiff and formal, like apologies written by someone told to do so. But over time, they softened. She began describing her therapy sessions, her new routines, her realizations about how destructive her behavior had been. She never sent anything to me directly. I was grateful for that. I needed distance. As senior year flew toward graduation, my life began to feel normal. I joined the yearbook committee, made new friends, and even started tutoring underclassmen in math. People stopped whispering when I passed in the hallways. The rumors faded, replaced by respect for how I'd handled something no teenager should ever have to deal with. My tutors became my biggest supporters. They knew what I had gone through. They extended deadlines when needed, encouraged me to apply for scholarships, and cheered when I got selected as a finalist for an academic award. One afternoon, the guidance counselor handed me a thick envelope with a gold seal. "You earned this," she said. Inside was a scholarship for students who overcame significant personal challenges. I didn't cry in her office, but I almost did in the hallway. My parents were ecstatic. They framed the award. Dad whooped so loudly, he startled the cat. Even Aunt Rachel sent flowers with a card that read, "You survived the storm. Now go live the life you deserve." I kept her card in my wallet. Graduation day came faster than I expected. Dad woke me up with pancakes shaped like smiley faces, something he hadn't done since I was little. Mom fussed over my hair until I gently protested. Aunt Rachel arrived early, armed with camera and tissues. The ceremony felt surreal. When they called my name for the scholarship, Dad clapped so enthusiastically, the principal paused mid-sentence. Mom was crying before I even reached the stage. When the ceremony ended, we took 1,000 pictures, one with every combination of family members imaginable, one with my cap slightly crooked, one where Dad blinked at the wrong moment, one where Mom held me so tightly I couldn't breathe. Then Mom's phone rang. The caller ID, Silvercrest Recovery Center. She answered, then handed the phone to me with a strange expression. "It's Marissa," she whispered. My heart thudded. I stepped outside, the warm June breeze brushing mid-cheeks. "Hello?" I said uncertainly. "Congratulations," Marissa said. Her voice was softer, lower, a far cry from the sharp, performative tone she used to weaponize. "Thanks," I said cautiously. She asked where I was going to college. I told her about Eastwood, about the dorms, about the research program I hoped to join. She actually listened. Didn't interrupt, didn't make it about her. "Well, good job," she said eventually. It was 5 minutes of the most normal conversation we'd had in years, but I didn't confuse it for reconciliation. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The summer before college was chaotic in the best ways. My parents helped me shop for dorm essentials. Mom bought too many shower caddies. Dad insisted I learn how to check tire pressure and jumpstart a car. Aunt Rachel dropped off boxes filled with snacks and first aid supplies, just in case, she said. 2 weeks before move-in day, we got a call from Silvercrest about a special family session. They said Marissa had something she wanted to share. My chest tightened. Did I want to hear it? Did I want to sit across from her? Did I want to reopen wounds that were finally starting to close? I wasn't sure, but I went. Not for her, for myself, for closure. Silvercrest was peaceful, surrounded by mountains and sunlight filtering through pine trees. Families sat outside on benches, holding hands or drinking coffee. It felt like a place made for rebuilding the broken. We were taken to a therapy room where Marissa sat on a chair, hands trembling slightly. She looked healthier, fuller in the face, and steadier in posture, but there was a deep exhaustion in her eyes. She pulled out a sheet of paper and began reading. It wasn't the fake dramatic apology I expected. It was honest, detailed, painfully self-aware. She apologized for the bike, for the award ceremony, for the fake cancer, for the laptop, for the rumor, for the dress, for every wound she had carved into my life. She explained her diagnosis, explained how she had spent years resenting me for being the easier child, the sweeter one, the one who didn't need to perform to be loved. It wasn't excusable, she said, voice shaking, but I understand it now. I'm working on it. I'm trying to change. The room was quiet. Even the therapist seemed to sense how fragile the moment was. I didn't forgive her. I wasn't ready. But I thanked her. And I meant it. The therapist nodded approvingly. Forgiveness is a process. There is no timeline. We had lunch together afterward, me, my parents, Marissa, and a staffer. We talked about safe things like movie remix, weather, college dorm room shopping. It wasn't warm. It wasn't hostile. It was civil. And that was enough. Move-in day came. My parents cried ugly tears in the parking lot. Dad pretended it was allergies. Mom hugged me like she was trying to memorize the shape of my bones. My roommate Tasha was sweet and bubbly. My dorm room was cramped but cozy. College felt like a new world where I wasn't haunted by Marissa's insecurities or my parents' guilt. For the first time, I was free. And even though Marissa wasn't part of my daily life, she wasn't completely gone either. Every few weeks, she sent a letter, not asking for forgiveness, not begging for closeness, just updating me on her progress. I read them. Sometimes I replied, sometimes I didn't. Boundaries. My therapist would have been proud. I wondered if one day things would be different. If distance, therapy, and time could rebuild something resembling a sisterhood. But I didn't rush it. Healing wasn't linear. And neither were we.
College became the beginning of a life I'd once believed was impossible. I made new friends who knew nothing about my family chaos. I ran with the university's running club. I studied late with classmates in crowded libraries. I laughed more freely, slept without fear, and walked campus without carrying an invisible backpack full of dread. For the first time, my identity wasn't shaped by Marissa's shadow. But healing wasn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It was about slowly building a future where the past didn't control me anymore. And strangely enough, part of that future involved Marissa. I didn't attend the first family therapy session after I left for school, but Mom called me afterward. She's doing better, she said cautiously. Her therapist says she's more reflective now. Reflective, a word I never thought would apply to my sister. Marissa had started taking courses through a community college satellite program connected to Silvercrest. She was working a part-time job at the facility's bookstore. She was apparently good with customers, friendly, patient, helpful. I almost laughed at the irony. But the real shock. She wasn't asking for anything from me. Not forgiveness, not friendship, not attention. She simply stayed consistent in her progress. That consistency mattered more than any apology ever could. Thanksgiving break was the real test. Silvercrest allowed Marissa to come home for a supervised holiday visit, something that made my stomach twist with old memories. She arrived wearing jeans and a soft sweater, hair tied simply, none of the dramatic flair she used to weaponize. She hovered awkwardly near the door, asking if she could come in, an action so unlike her that my parents exchanged startled glances. Dinner was quiet at first. We all felt like strangers practicing small talk. But slowly, conversation loosened. Marissa asked about my classes, not to compare grades or brag about her own accomplishments, but simply because she wanted to know. She listened, really listened. After dessert, she asked to speak. "I know I don't deserve to be here," she said softly. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying. I want to keep trying." Dad reached over and squeezed her hand. Mom teared up. I didn't say anything, but I didn't recoil either. Small steps. She went back to Silvercrest that night, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel dread watching her walk away. December brought more changes. Marissa finished the first phase of her program and transitioned into supervised independent living through Silvercrest Bridge Apartments. She found a part-time job at Maple and Pine Bookstores, a small independent shop in town that loved hiring people rebuilding their lives. She took online classes through North Valley Community College and earned straight A's. During the next family session, she didn't glare or deflect. She admitted patterns, recognized triggers, acknowledged the year she spent competing with a little sister who had no idea she'd been drafted into one-sided war. She didn't look at me with resentment anymore, just regret and determination.
We weren't healed, not by a long shot, but we were no longer enemies. Spring semester of college was a whirlwind. I declared my major, joined research groups, and pulled more all-nighters than I cared to admit. Mom visited for Parents' Weekend and embarrassed me with constant photos. Dad showed up in an Eastwood University sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. My roommate Tasha became like a sister, one who actually liked me. Marissa texted occasionally. Not daily, not heavily, but just small updates. I passed my anatomy class. I'm learning meditation. My therapist says I'm doing better with emotional regulation. I replied when I wanted to. There was no pressure, no guilt, no manipulation. For the first time, our communication was on my terms. Sophomore year came with study abroad opportunities, and I applied to a summer research program in Spain. When I got accepted, I told my family during a video call. Mom clapped. Dad asked about international phone plans. Marissa smiled softly. "You'll love it there," she said. "I studied abroad for a semester once. Remember? Before everything fell apart." I did remember, but I only nodded. Yeah, I remember. Before I left, she helped me pack. She'd traveled enough to know what I'd need. Practical advice, no theatrics. At the airport, she hugged me. Awkward, brief, but real. "Be safe," she murmured. "You too," I replied. Spain was life-changing. I worked in a lab, explored old cities, struggled with the language, and found joy in places I never imagined I'd see. I mailed postcards home, including one to Marissa. She later told me she kept every one in a shoebox. Sophomore year brought graduate school applications, and Marissa offered to proofread my statement. I hesitated. Then I sent it. She gave thoughtful suggestions and found grammar mistakes I'd overlooked. She didn't insert herself, didn't make it about her, didn't overstep. Her feedback made my application stronger. And when acceptance emails rolled in, she texted me, "I'm proud of you." Really. I believed her. That was new. Senior year arrived, and Marissa attended my university awards ceremony with my parents. She sat quietly, clapped appropriately, and even brought me flowers afterward. No spotlight stealing, no disaster. Just support. We took a photo together, tentative smiles, but genuine ones. That night, she asked Idli to talk. We sat on her apartment's small balconies, sipping tea. "I know I can't undo what I did," she said softly, "but I want to be something, maybe a sister, a real one, if you'll ever let me." I swallowed hard. The wind rustled the leaves. Anxiety and warmth twisted in my chest. "I'm not ready," I admitted quietly, "but maybe someday." She nodded. "That's enough. It's more than I deserve." For once, she didn't push. The summer before I moved for graduate school, Marissa helped me apartment hunt. She carried boxes, assembled furniture, and didn't complain once. We even laughed a few times, surprised, unplanned laughter. That felt like rediscovering something buried. On my last night before leaving home again, she handed me a small gift, a photo of us as young children, before the jealousy, before the fights, before the wounds. We were smiling, arms around each other, perfectly unaware of the storm ahead. "She thought you might want to keep a piece of us," she said. I didn't cry, but something in me softened. I hung the photo in my new apartment, not front and center, but on a shelf where I'd see it while studying. A quiet reminder that people can change, that healing isn't linear, that families break, but sometimes they rebuild. Not into what they once were, but into what they choose to become. Marissa and I text now, not daily, not heavily, but consistently. She tells me about her classes, her job, her therapy milestones. I tell her about research, campus life, new friends. We're not the sisters we could have been, but we're the sisters we're becoming. Scarred, healing, careful, hopeful, one day at a time. And for now, that's enough.